Hey everyone, today I'm going to be reacting to my first short film that I did last year. I haven't watched it in probably 6 months, and that may not seem like a long time, but for me, I'm doing this stuff every single week, and I'm learning every single week, and I'm trying to get better every day. So I'm going to watch back and see what I think and comment on some of the mistakes that we made that I would fix now that I have some more knowledge. So here we go. Start the film with this nice drone shot that the cinematographer took on his drone. I like this shot. It's a nice way to put the titles in, and I think it looks good. This is a different house. Already I can see that the color grade is not good. It's not horrific, but I think if I went back and I decided to recolor grade this, it would probably look a million times better. And this part is definitely a little slow. So you're getting these notes and the cutting is just a little bit slow. And I think here I was trying to slow it down a little bit so that you could try to understand what was going on with this box of notes that this person was opening. And it's like, okay, we get it, at some point. This is a terrible shot of the school. It was actually a shot that I took that was a still for location scouting. It was like a rainy day. I actually was not able to get back and get a shot that I wanted of the school. I think I realized when I got into the editing room that I needed some establishing shots, because when I was jumping from scene to scene, I was going like from someone's home to the school, home to the school. I wanted to establish that. Part of that was sort of that 90s sitcom sort of thing where like they show you the outside of the house and then you're in it. And they show you the outside of the school and then you're in it. It's sort of like this indicator, okay, we're cutting to another day, because part of my struggle with the film was, how can I go from one day to the next and show a passage of time without showing a calendar or doing something ridiculously cheesy? Because really I was trying to condense this really long script into 15 minutes max. So this was how I decided to do it. And then I just never got back to that location to get those shots. So, I mean, it was a high quality shot off my camera, and I just stuck it in as a still, but it looks terrible. And I think that the beginning of the film does seem to start like on a fairly dreary note, but we're going from the current time to the past, and I think that it's starting on a bouncy note, and I would prefer a bouncy picture. If I was going to go back and re-edit, I would go back to that location and take a really pretty picture in the sun. The very first scene in the school, we spent hours shooting this, and it never played off the way I wanted. We ended up reshooting it, which is what was actually in the film. And there was we had no extras in the room that day. On the second day, we shot this completely differently on a Ronin, with several extras in the background, which looked nice. Obviously, it's more believable. But it wasn't coming off. We couldn't get the moves right, or something just wasn't right about the shot every single time. And after about 3 hours, we had to move on that very first day to the next thing. We had, a schedule. So when I got to the cutting room, I was just like, this just doesn't work. It's not playing off the way that I want. And it was really the introduction to the two main characters. So that was really tough. And we reshot it, and it came out okay. But it just doesn't quite, I don't know, just the two people in the room with the third character walking in without any extras just kind of makes it less believable. This movie relied heavily on montage sequence that was supposed to have music laid over it, which is exactly what we did. kind of like a bulk of the relationship between the two girls is supposed to be built in this montage work. So you're relying heavily on the imagery, creating the story without any dialogue. And that did fall a little bit flat, which isn't surprising. You know, it's my first film, and my cinematographer, although incredibly talented, it's also his first film. So it's tough trying to bring out those emotions in the audience and make them understand how the characters feel in the story is very difficult, especially without trained actors. These are just, one of these is my niece and her friend. So from a casting standpoint, that may not have been my best choice. They did a good job, but spending the time with them that they needed, which I felt like I did, but I definitely did not spend enough time to make them understand the characters fully and to evoke those emotions. So, if I back up, there's this scene in the hallway in the first montage where you're basically supposed to see the friend from the first scene kind of walking by trying to say hello to the one character, and then the other girl runs in and the other girl's sort of jealous. It's like, it's so subtle, and I think that this is sort of one of the miniature themes or parts of it that's overlooked as like, was that even necessary? First scene in the house, we had a lot of trouble with the audio. So, I mean, it's not terrible. It's just in that very beginning part where she starts talking. But my battery's gonna die. In the kitchen, we couldn't get the boom close enough without getting it in the shot, which is a super lame excuse. We probably should have tried to boom from a different spot, and we probably should have then moved the boom, but this was a single shot. We weren't going to cut. We could have done it differently. We could have set up the camera, and then we could have cut to when she comes over to the other side, and then we could have boomed from there. That's honestly what we should have done. We turned off the fridge. We spent a bunch of time, but in the end, the boom just wasn't close enough. However, I do think that it's possible that I probably could boost that now that I know how. I'm not really sure. I could try to go in there and boost that sound because the quality's great. You know, we nailed that, but I would say that the color grade in this shot is actually not too bad. I think the blacks are probably like completely crushed. You can see that the girl in the background, she's like this big, dark, mean shadow. Her hair's super dark and her shirt, she's just kind of this black blob. She's really in the background, but I would probably bring her up a little bit. I think that this main character, Sam, here is pretty well lit, and then this other girl is just really... The blacks are just crushed too much. This is a decent scene. I think this definitely could have benefited from a cut, but I like the shot. This montage is okay. I do think it's a little bit slow. I'm trying to, again, establish the relationship between the girls and how they grew together by showing them in activities. This is a cute little scene. It's tough because after you've watched it like 300 times, it's like you don't want to see it again. It starts to look like crap. But this scene kind of drags on a little bit. This is a cool shot with the record player. At least we've got some variety now with the top down. Color grade's not too bad. Again here with the crushed blacks. It's kind of cool that that smoke is kind of moving in the background. You can see with the Ronin, like, I should have cut before with that Ronin shot because it was static and then it started moving, which is fine. This is a major problem with the audio here. We had to ADR the voice here, and it's just, it doesn't seem real. You can tell it's ADR, and I really hate it. We actually started this shot behind the actress. We used the Ronin and we were walking behind her into the room behind, past the teacher and right to her seat. It was a single shot, like, for this entire scene. And I liked that, but I realized when I got into the cutting room, we made a huge mistake. And on the right side of the frame, you could see all the IMAX on the desks, and the movie's set in the 90s. These are like probably like 2019 or something IMAX. So I think that was the only time we made like a huge error with the motifs for the 90s. But yeah, we couldn't have that in, so I was super bummed. And we ended up going back on a reshoot day and shooting her coming in, and then we cut, which worked fine. I thought it was fine. I just really wanted it to be a single shot. But at the end of the day, it's like, why do you want it to be a single shot? Like, you don't need to be married to that and try to make it work just because you loved the shot. It's trash, and it was. There was no way to cut that out of the frame, and we're shooting in 1080, so we couldn't punch in or anything like that. So yeah, that's what we ended up doing. And of course, because we were doing the single shot, the boom operator was running behind us. This is this person's like first time operating a boom. So they're trying to run behind us without shaking the cord on the boom pole and trying to be in the right spot. It was difficult. It's a good shot though. I love this room. The location is perfect because it probably hasn't been updated since the 90s. So it looks really cool. Little art room. This is kind of a turning point in the film. So we have this like huge, massive lens flare right here, which I love. I mean, it is pretty washed out in the top, and it's probably a little bit over the top, but I liked it in camera. We weren't using a monitor at all. We were just doing playback on the LCD of the EOS R. I know. So yeah, this scene's all right. The color grade is way too oversaturated. It definitely needs some help there. But it looks all right. Bedroom scenes, they look pretty good. So this girl in the black, she actually was shot at night. We shot the first scene in the first bedroom during the day, and then when we got to the end of filming, we had to push these in, and it was nighttime. The schedule was pretty messed up, and we lit it for day, and I think it's pretty convincing. But this is kind of where it starts to fall apart a little bit. We really pushed these phone scenes with the second girl towards, like I said, the end of the day, and we had like maybe 1 to 2 takes for each, and we should have taken the time to do it again, because I just feel like this wasn't her best performance. A couple of the other phone calls that we did at the same time were better, but where this was the initial phone call, sort of, it's not introducing her, but it's like her biggest first kind of lines. It sort of falls flat. I love the note scene here with the pass off, and this actress Delana, she's awesome. I think she did really good in this scene, emulating this character. Yeah, it looks pretty good. It's a little orange, definitely, again, with the color grade. That's across the board. We can just agree this needs to be regraded. This is the first scene where you start to see some really bad cutting, and it's not really the cutting fault. I'm the cutter. It's not really the cutter's fault. It's that we actually we put ourselves over the wrong shoulder. And you can't really realize because we didn't break the 180, and you might think that you have to break the 180 to go over the wrong shoulder, but you don't. Okay, so we're over Sam's shoulder, over her left shoulder here, and you're looking at Lexi. And of course, her shoulder is facing Lexi's right shoulder. But when we come around the other side, we should have gone over Lexi's right shoulder so that she would remain on the left side of the frame. But we actually took the camera all the way over to Lexi's left shoulder. So now Sam is on the left side of the frame. So when you're cutting, you might not know why, but when you're watching it, it feels almost like a jump cut. It's just because they're swapping sides of the frame. So we went a little too far on that shoulder, and I love this scene, but you can see when it crosses over that you can do it, but it just, for how this was done and how short the conversation was and how I had to keep cutting back and forth, this would benefit from fewer cuts, but then it would be sort of dragging. So there's really no great way to do this the way that we did the shoulder. I mean, I still think it's a solid scene, but it's just taking the film and it's just downgrading it from what it could have been. this room is so cool. I was really pumped that we found this room with all this cool chemistry stuff. The extras did like pretty damn good job in this. Really, they just had to pretend they were super bored watching the teacher, but I think they did really good. Sam looks great. I love how this played off. That shot was really, really hard. It's a little bit wobbly, just slightly, not to the point that I thought that it wasn't good. We did this several times. This was our best take. And on a student film set, you are on a schedule that you wouldn't believe. Especially where you're not paying people. Nobody's getting paid, so they don't have great motivations for being there. Some people had to be there for their grade, but even then, it's tough. The scene played out pretty decently. I would say one thing that we did that I kind of wish we didn't was we actually didn't record any sound on this scene. There was no dialogue, and this was another scene again that was relying heavily on the actors' performances. They were communicating to each other without saying anything. And I think it went off pretty good, but I sort of regretted when I got into the cutting room, there was just no ambient sound of any kind. No clinking, like people weren't really moving, but no air, no, nothing. So we went from one scene, I had cut that scene, and then when I put this on, it's just like cuts to dead air, and it's hard because I had to build some sound there. I can't remember what I ended up building for sound. So I've got it on mute. So I actually created my own sounds of her like getting up out of the chair and putting the goggles down. I made all those sounds in this studio just with my own body while watching the clip. And you can't tell, but just like we did add also the marker sound. I did the marker squeaks, but like the teacher moving, you wouldn't necessarily hear much, but like when he lifts his arm to tell her to leave the room, you just hear nothing. It's just sort of dead sound. So that all had to be built in, which is fun, and it's really awesome when you get to listen to it and you're like, wow, I just built that out of nothing. But this definitely could have benefited from rolling something. I would do that. I think we did take room tone. Didn't really end up helping us, unfortunately. So this is like the killer scene with the good actor. This is Dave, a local actor. And this was actually the first scene that we did, which is kind of funny because it's probably the most intense scene in the entire film. And he nails it. But this was Sam's very first acting experience ever in her life in this very scene. It took a few takes, but I think she did really good. People said they thought she nailed it, which is really awesome. A few things here. The team that built this set, because we actually built these walls, and they decorated the set really nicely. And then we just didn't really get in there and show any other angles. So we have over her shoulder and over his shoulder, which is great. They're good. But also the wall is super bare behind him. I'm okay about it because the scene is so gross that I think this sort of like almost institutional look, you can see just like the corner of a picture, but there's nothing behind him, sort of works really well. Like you don't want it to look warm and inviting. He's a principal. We could have put like any number of things on the wall behind him. But again, I'm okay with that sort of gross institutional look with that horrible lighting because that's exactly what it is. And it gives you that feeling of grossness. We did a third angle that was kind of, I don't think we included it. We did a third angle here where he lifts up the note. We didn't put it in. It didn't work. You know, there's a knowledge that you have to have about how these clips are going to cut together. And it's like, when I got into the cutting room, I'm like, that, you can't cut, it doesn't work. You can't cut that in. And I had to try to explain it to the cinematographer because he loved the shot. And I'm just like, it doesn't cut in. And you need to be able to see that in your mind and realize where that's going to cut in. And that's experience. It's storyboarding. It's two things I did not have. And it was a little bit of a shame that there wasn't more to this other than the two shots. I also realized when I got into the cutting room, we had no shot of her coming in, which I guess didn't really matter. We just cut to her in the principal's office. We don't need to watch her walk in the door, but we just had no variety at this point. We literally had just these two shots to cut through, and that was it. So it's a little dull, I guess. We could have had some variety. I would have liked to have had some sort of establishing shot, whether it was outside or inside, just to show the office. Maybe Dave writing before she came in or something. Cut straight to Dave when we say for Samantha to go to the principal's office. We cut straight to Dave, writing on the desk or something, like a wider shot. And that was a mistake that was made a lot in this film. And it was fairly intentional. And in the end, I decided it was a bad creative choice because I really like the tights and I wanted to shoot a lot of this in the tights, regardless if people said, oh, there's too many close-ups. Because I thought, oh, well, this is a stylistic choice. That's fine and dandy, but your stylistic choice of sticking in the tights gives zero context to where you're at and what's going on in the film, and you really don't know how much the wides matter. It's not just about variety for the viewer to kind of not be bored in the shot. It's much more about how much the different shot sizes actually tell the story. And it's really hard to visualize that when you're shooting. And we had a comprehensive shot list. Maybe comprehensive is too liberal of a word, but every single shot that's in here was noted. So there are some, like this gorgeous establishing shot of her outside the school. This is great. We did good with this. We did better in this scene than cutting into her. But yeah, the close-ups, sticking in the close-ups, they're gorgeous, but it doesn't tell the story. This is probably one of our better scenes. I actually really love these close-ups, and this is a super intimate moment between the mother and the daughter. I think both actresses absolutely killed this. Funny thing about this, we had the window behind the mother was blown out, and we actually took ND and it's actually covering the window. There's like a whole sheet of ND covering the window so that there wasn't like these blown out highlights. You can see the sky in the back is blue. There's snow on the ground. It's super blurry, obviously, but you can see there's snow, and all those highlights were super blown out. It was winter, but it was like, I think February, and it was also kind of like that dirty snow sort of thing. So the ND helped us hide all that, and it came out and looked really nice, but it was just kind of funny because we basically had to gaff this sheet of ND on the car. Hey, it works. And yeah, this came out pretty good. We did it on both sides, I think. And also that helped so that there was no reflection of the cinematographer, because he's just sitting in the opposite seat on each of these shots handheld, so he could easily reflect in the window, and the ND made that much better so that you really, I mean, you can search that window and I don't see a reflection anywhere in it. So yeah, I think that this is one of the better parts of the film for sure. So we're back to the bedroom scenes again. I can see flicker from the Christmas lights, and I really don't like that, but it is what it is. I think this scene looks great. There's definitely like a huge blowout on her hand from the sunlight. We did not just use natural light though. This room is lit. You can see the color balance is not exactly the same, but they're not in the same house, so I'm okay with that. I think it looks like daylight regardless. I think this was the better phone call in my opinion. The one that I thought the actress nailed a lot better. So not too bad considering. I wanted to do a side-by-side, like a split screen, but that required the performances to be like dead on both times. It was close, but it just wasn't worth the effort because I probably in the end would not have been able to make it work. We would have had to cut back to the full screen at some point. And I think that just would have shown a mistake. So we kept with what was safe and what worked, and I think that's a good choice. This is one of my absolute favorite scenes. This is a reshoot. So this is a huge scene. It's a small scene, but it's a huge moment where the antagonist and the protagonist finally meet face to face and have this like intense moment together. But it just doesn't play off that way. People that have watched the film, which is not, I mean, it's maybe 3 or 4, they're not picking up on it. They're not understanding what's happening here, which is not their fault. It's my fault. So again, it would have been more believable if there was more people in here, but it's also okay that they're sort of solitary in the scene alone together. So it's kind of, again, they're just crossing paths here and making eye contact, and it's supposed to be like super uncomfortable. Actually, there's some extras in the background in the classroom, and the funny thing is they're actually filming another movie in there. So I said, whatever, we've got extras in the background. So yeah, I cut this as best as I could. I really wish that I had done it again though, because when Sam reaches the bottom of the stairs, this would have been much more emotional. I wanted to have her like crouch down and like into a ball, clutching the railing and like just losing her shit. And I think that I knew we had this shot and that it was fine. It was good. Everything's in focus. It's nailed. The timing was right. But I was like, do I really want to put her through this? I should have done it for the film. But one of the biggest things I learned with this film is to not to shy away and be like, this is good enough. Push more. Get more. Do what you feel. Because too many times I said, this is good enough. I think this works. And of course, the AD's like, okay, great. Like, he's not going to sit there and be like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? It's not even his script. You're the director, and you need to sit there and you need to say, I'm not satisfied, and I need to push further to make this better. So that's, again, probably the number one thing that I wish I told myself. I like this. I like this shot a lot. This is another banger performance from the mom. This is another pretty intense scene. I think we nailed this down pretty good. One mistake we made was at the end of the mother's sort of monologue. When Sam starts to like, she stands up and she says like this big line like, Mom, I'm gay. And then we didn't have her mic'd for that. We didn't have her mic'd for it because we filmed her whole monologue where she was facing the camera, and then we filmed the mom mic'd facing the camera, and the line she says like, Mom, I'm gay, the camera was actually on the mother, so the mother was mic'd. So that was a huge major error, especially because that was one of the biggest lines of the film. She came out to her mother and she wasn't mic'd. So I mean, you can hear it, but it's perfectly audible, but you can tell that she wasn't mic'd. So that's super suck. Or you know what? It wasn't the Mom, I'm gay line. Sorry, it was the line following that. But it was still super important part, and we didn't have camera on her either. And we probably should have cut to her. That was the big problem. We never shot that line. And we really couldn't go back. I mean, obviously we could have gone back, but we would have had to restyle that entire location for that one line. It just was not a feasible option at all. So this was actually a last-minute montage because we were getting to the end of the film, and I realized that we were completely missing basically enough footage. So we came up with these little parts of the girls just doing stuff together. I was hell-bent on getting that light bright in the film because it was something that we found on set that was just there at the location, and I was like, this is so 90s and it's so great, and everyone was like, well, it's not part of the film or whatever, like, you're like, where are we gonna put it or whatever. And I was like, oh my god, we can fit it in this scene. I think it's great. This montage is pretty good. This was a pretty cramped room on a Ronin M, so that was something. We spent a lot of time putting this TV scene together. There's actually no television. And we, used some LEDs bouncing on their face, and I think we came up behind whatever we had put there. That was, I think we actually did wheel a TV. I was all hell bent on having a TV, and then it ended up that we didn't need to show the TV. We needed to show them looking at the TV. So I liked this shot quite a bit. I think it was all right. I think we probably should have done a few more takes on this. This whole entire ending sequence here, I think that we could have done a better job with the acting. Really, it's the directing. It's not the actors. It's just that I should have spent more time with them. And this was an intimate scene, and they were nervous for this entire scene. And I really should have spent time alone with them, and we should have rehearsed this scene. And we didn't. We never rehearsed the scene. I don't think we ever got to this scene. So that was a major, I don't know if you want to call it an error. I don't like to use excuses, but we used all the time we had. So the grade on this is kind of awful again. I said I wasn't going to say that, but the people that lit this did a great job. So now, the funny thing is that the opener and the closer to this film were actually never supposed to be there. There was a whole different opener and closer to the film, but then COVID, right? So, I rewrote it. And I actually filmed myself, as you can see, in the attic in my apartment because I was thinking, what am I going to do? So I came up with this idea and I thought, well, my attic looks hella cool for like a film set. And I had this old trunk that was up there that actually I had brought downstairs into my office, and we brought it back up and my girlfriend filmed me. So we finished the film. I was not going to let it not be done. So we did this ending and this opener, and I think it's actually pretty cool. But the question is, do people actually pick up on what's going on? Like this girl, or woman, I should say, she is opening these notes from high school, and the whole film is the notes that she's reading about these things that happened. So now you come back to the end where she opens the final note, and now the teenage version of her is opening that final note that she's reading in the attic. I don't know if that's super obvious. This is a cool scene. I really wanted to show that Sam was like in her own mind. Like she's in the middle of the hallway and all these people are just rushing by and she's in her own head. I think we pulled it off. I also can't look at that without laughing because she's sitting on an apple or standing on an apple box because she's so small. She's just a very small person. And we couldn't really, like, the way we framed it, we would have cut like her whole body. It was kind of funny. So she was standing on an apple box, and that's all I see, even though it's not in frame every time I watch it. And then we cut into this long shot, or I'm sorry, this tight shot of her where all the people are gone. And that was intentional, where like now she's truly escaped into her mind and there's nothing around her. She has no idea that there's anything other than her own head. And I don't know if we pulled that off, but that's it. We're going to close it up and head to the credits. Another thing that I did at the end was we had this scene where, you know, at the end, the scene where she turns her head and then it cuts to current day where this same person turns her head like she heard something. And this was supposed to be a match cut, and there was a whole piece written for that where the adult version of her was supposed to be like somebody walked in the room and scared her. It was the match cut to end the film. And I really liked that. I wrote that stuff just to wrap everything up. And again, we ended up not being able to do it because we didn't have a location with COVID. So we did it this way. It's fine, I guess. There's really no reason for her to turn because there's no other people. We had no other actors. It was just me and my girlfriend on the camera. So she turns around and the film ends, and I'm kind of left like, well, why is she turning around? But the people who've seen it think it's great. So, I mean, I don't know if they count because they're part of the crew, but so for them to see all their hard work come to fruit is amazing. Again, the huge takeaways on this, I think it's all right. 6 months later, I think it's okay. I'm not upset with it at all. I think that post-production wise, I've come a long way, and I probably could recut a little bit, and I probably could also definitely recolor this entire film, and actually it would be all right. I might even let people watch it. For a first piece, I don't think it's bad. I really don't. But again, biggest things that I learned are definitely time. Give yourself more time, and as organized as I was, you have to be more organized. You have to be organized more than you could ever possibly imagine, and then everything's just going to go wrong as far as timing and all these things. So I hope you enjoyed watching my reaction. I'm going to make another video that's going to be about the actual day of production and the roles on the film set and how we could have nailed that better and what you can do to set yourself up to be in a better place. So thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to come back and watch the next video on this. Thanks. Bye.